Welcome to Mind Bending Monday. We are so excited that you're joining us. I am super excited because for the next 2 weeks, our focus will be on fluency. Do your students already have a conceptual understanding of basic facts, but they need to practice? We're going to discuss games and puzzles that require a knowledge of basic facts, but also involve strategic thinking and higher level thinking. So they're engaging. They're much more fun. Students will love them. Are you ready? Let's get started. Focus on Fluency, Episode 1. In education, there has been a lot of talk in recent years about fluency. NCTM has a great position statement that is definitely worth reading. And I agree that students should build a conceptual understanding through problem solving. And that should happen first. But also, we know that practice is essential. The practice, however, should be engaging and purposeful, not just flashcards. So in the classroom, we practice through problem solving and through lots of different engaging tasks. But in this episode, we are going to introduce games. These games involve fluency, but they also require higher order thinking skills. So they're engaging, they're fun, but they're also a great way to practice. This is important for students of all ages. So some of our games will involve negative numbers for middle schoolers, and we'll have some that are only addition and subtraction for younger students. So stay with us as we provide just reviews and introduce you to several different games. Links to all of these games or where to purchase them will be provided, and you can visit our website to download Google Slides with all the interactive links. We really hope these will be helpful. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started. We're going to start with one of my favorite games, Muggins. I was so excited when I first met the man who designed and developed and produced the game. It was at a math conference years ago, and he was selling his new game. Since then, this game has won national awards from Parent Choice, from Dr. Toy. It's a Mensa Select game. It has won all kinds of awards, and it's amazing. Your students will love it. So you can get details about all of the rules on their website, and that's linked at the end. But one thing that's really important is that this game is all about strategy. You have to know your facts in order to be able to play, but it's all about strategy, and it's very engaging because bluffing is involved. So you play with marbles, and what you do, just in general, is roll the dice, use those 3 numbers once and only once to create a product or a sum, to create a number, and then you place it on the board. Now, the placement is what's key because you're trying to develop runs of your own color while preventing runs from in another color from your opponent. But bluffing is allowed. Now, when I taught this to 8th grade, I had a boy raise his hand and he said, "Miss Luttrell, you should never play poker because apparently I am not a great bluffer." But the thing that does is really promotes engagement because when it's not your turn, you still have to be paying attention. Otherwise, your opponent could bluff and steal a move or create their own run, and you wouldn't know because you weren't paying attention. So this is a fabulous game that involves strategy but requires a knowledge of basic facts to play. Now, you can also play this game, and it comes with 3 12-sided dice. So you could roll those and use that with just addition and subtraction. So if you have younger students, they can play. It's called Junior Muggins, and the directions are included. Now, if you buy the game, you'll have a choice of whether to buy one-sided or two-sided. And if you teach middle school, this was actually the game that we were playing when the 8th grader told me I should not play poker, is ops. So you can see it's integers. So you've got 4 dice instead, 2 positive and 2 negative. And the students really just love this game. It's very engaging. It's very fun. They have knockout, which I've used with younger students. 1st and 2nd grade love knockout, so you can look on their website. But if you're not familiar with this game, I really hope you'll go to their website and check it out because it is amazing. So this is my top choice, but we are going to talk about several others. Okay, let's look at the next game. The next game is one that many of you may know, but in case you don't, it's worth sharing. NCTM has interactive versions of 2 games that are also amazing, Product Game and Factor Game. These games, just like Muggins, require a knowledge of basic facts to be able to play, but the game is all about strategy. So if you're unfamiliar with Product Game, you can go online, you can play by yourself or against the computer, or you can play with 2 people. You can customize this. So I don't usually do this, but you can go and remove a factor and add a new factor. You can also change the number that it takes to win, the number in a row to win. Now, you can only have 9 factors. So before you can add one, you would have to remove one. So the way that you play is you choose a number, and then the computer's turn will choose. And these are your factors. And whatever your product is, you get to place a counter, or if you're playing in person, or your number turns that color and you get that block. Now, the goal of the game is to get 4 in a row, either horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. So not only are you trying to make sure you can get 4 in a row, but you're trying to make sure your opponent doesn't. So if they have 3 in a row, you have to make sure that you do not allow these squares to be moved to any number that is a factor of the number that would help your opponent win. So this is a great game. You're also thinking strategy. So for example, I might try to take control of the middle of the board, but now the computer is going to take, I'm not sure why the computer took that. So you can think about what you want to do and try to get your 4 in a row, try to prevent the computer from getting 4 in a row. You can only move 1 green square, but these don't belong to anybody, and you can have them on the same number. So that's how to play Product Game. Factor Game, you can also customize. You can add more numbers by changing the number of rows and columns. And the way this works, and there are directions, so you can scroll down and look at the directions, look at the objectives. It has the objectives for upper grades, middle school, and Product Game has that too. But when you choose a number, your opponent gets any factor of that number that has not yet been taken. So, for example, you might think, or students might think, it's great to choose 16, but they'll quickly find out it's not, because then your opponent would get every factor of 16. So, which would add to 16. So your opponent gets the same number of points. So that's a little challenging. So they have to start to think about that. And students, it takes, in my experience, it takes students a while to realize, I wonder how prime numbers could help me. So this is a really, really fun game. Also, you can't choose numbers for which there are no factors remaining or you lose. So this is another great strategy game that requires knowledge of basic facts, but it's not about basic facts. It's all about thinking skills and strategy. So the students love it. It's really engaging. I'm not sure if I showed you this, but you can also yes, I did show you this. You can customize your numbers in product game also. So this is really, really fun. Those are both awesome games. I hope you'll explore them. Next, I'd like us to look at a few games that require a knowledge of basic facts, but also require students to use number sense and to look at multiple options in order to solve a puzzle. So although this isn't the same type of strategic thinking that we saw in the first few games, this does require additional thinking skills, and it is really fun. It's a challenge, and the students love it. So you can play it as a game, you can use it as an individual puzzle, you can put it on the board in the morning. I used to take this the one year as a math coach that I had lunch duty. I would just take these in my pocket, and at lunch in the cafeteria, I'd pull it out and hold it up at the end of the table, and the students would race to see who solved it first. They loved it. I used to always keep them in my pocket, and if I saw students lined up to use the restroom, if you're in middle school, you don't know what that means. But in elementary, we take them as a group, and so we would do this. And just if I saw a class lined up, that would be a way that we could really engage in some math practice and not waste time, but it's fun. Students don't think of it as a drill. They think of it as a challenge and a game. So the goal for 24 is to add, subtract, multiply, or divide each number. You have to use all four numbers once and only once with the goal of creating 24. So this is also a great way to introduce order of operations conceptually and to have students practice it in 5th and 6th grade as they're learning it. But I just wanted to give you an example. This is the double digit game and the single digit game. So as you can see, the dots indicate the level of difficulty. And most importantly, there is no answer key. So one year we were hosting a math and science night, and we had in the media center 24 games set up. And we also had the addition and subtraction and variables, which I'll introduce later. But the students were encouraged to play, and they loved it. Well, I was at another station in a completely different room, and a dad came up to me, and he had 4 numbers written on his palm in pen, and his 4th grade son was next to him, and he said, "We can't figure this out." And my son said, "You'll probably be able to figure it out, and you won't tell me." And I looked at the numbers, and I said, well, he's right on both counts. But we laughed, and I asked him some questions, and he did discover the answer. So you can see, I just want to point out to you the difference of thinking in the difficulty levels. So for the first one, you can pretty easily see that if you look at this, you can use these two numbers. 12 minus 8 is 4, 17 minus 11 is 6, and then 6 times 4 is 24. But in this card, for example, it doesn't quite work that way. So you have to do more than one. You can't just make 2 factors. The solution I came up with, although there are multiple solutions, is 23 minus 17 is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. 30 minus 6 is 24. But there's probably more than one solution. So you can see how to play. It's a really fun game. Students love racing against each other. And as I said, one of the things I really love is the different variations. There's one with integers. So if you teach middle school, you can introduce or practice not introduce, but practice positive and negative numbers. Just really lots of fun ways to do this. So I hope you'll check out 24. Another game that requires students to look at numbers and really try lots of different possible combinations is an interactive online game from Greg Tang's website called Kakuma. My students also loved this in elementary school, so I'll just show you really quickly. It does give you directions, but you can choose whether or not you want to do just addition or multiplication. And then you have different levels. So let's just start at a level 4 so you can get the idea. And I'm not going to try to go quickly, but you can see that this is timed. Your goal is to look at each hexagon, and it'll disappear as it takes you a long time. And you click on the one number that is a product of any two other numbers. So when you click on 42, it says yes, because 6 times 7 is 42. 6 times 8 is 48. So as you click on the numbers, it changes to just that number. And then what happens is eventually, as the sun sets, you have to try to beat it and get through with the puzzles. But as this finishes, then it creates a larger hexagon where you then have to do these numbers, use these numbers to solve. So it's a pretty fun game. The students love it. It's timed, but it's just good practice. So as you can see, there are lots of different levels. You can start this on different levels. If you do level 1, you just don't have as many numbers. So you're still having to decide options, but you have squares instead of hexagons. So you really don't have to eliminate as many possibilities. But this is a really fun game. The students really enjoy it. Last but definitely not least is Albert's Insomnia. I also had the pleasure of meeting the creator of this game, and he is really fascinating. This game you can play with multiple players, but there are also solitaire versions. And the goal is to use as few or as many cards as you can to create the number, but you have to go consecutive numbers in your turn. So for example, the first person would have to create a 1. Well, there is a 1. The next person would maybe create 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. The next person would have 3. And then 4, 3 plus 1. And then 5, 6 minus 1. And so on. You would continue on until if someone makes a mistake, they're out. Or if a number cannot be created, then that person is out. But if no one can create that number, then the last player who gave a correct statement is the winner. And when you win the hand, you take those 4 cards, you keep them, and you deal 4 new cards. There are also different colors of cards, so that helps if you want to focus on just specific facts. But really, this is such an awesome game. And he gives lots of variations, lots of different ways to play, and his website he gives demonstrations. But if you haven't seen it, it's a really wonderful game. Also, students write down their solutions on a recording sheet so you can check it later for accuracy. Thank you so much for joining us today. Do you have a favorite game that involves strategic thinking and requires knowledge of basic facts? Please go to our website and share your ideas. Here are links to all of the games that were mentioned in today's episode. But if you go to our blog, you can just get direct links to all of those sites. Thank you again so much for spending time with us today. We know how valuable your time is, and we really appreciate your time and your thoughts. So much so that we are giving away a prize every month. Here are the ways that you can win, and we hope that you'll participate. Maybe your name will be in our next newsletter. Also, Be sure to hit like and subscribe. We don't want you to miss a single episode of Mind Bending Mondays. Thanks again so much. We look forward to seeing you next week.